Hello there, Warhammer fans. This is Remington, your host, with the co-host of this show, Andy 2D6. Welcome to the Andy and Rem Show. It's the Andy and Remington Steel Show on a Tuesday night. We're back! It's the Andy and Remington Steel Show for your home delight. And we're talking about Age of Sigmar and everything else that is cool. We're talking about Warhammer Fantasy. It's easy to learn the rules. And Skirmish. It's the Andy and Remington Steel Show on a Tuesday night.
Now, before we begin, ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to draw your attention to something here on the graphics for the show, for the intro there. I don't know if you've noticed, but on the left of the image, you can see a rare clip of Remington in his natural habitat performing his patented 360 maneuver. Anyway, that's quite enough of that. Welcome, one and all, to the Andy and Rem Show. I believe this is episode 89 now. And you may think that this is going to be quite a slow few weeks because obviously the new 40k edition is the shiny new toy that GW have got, and they're going to be playing with it until all that shine has been well and truly rubbed off, you might think. So perhaps Age of Sigmar isn't going to get that much attention, but you'd be wrong, because we're going to prove that Space Marines potentially not that exciting, and that where all the cool kids are going to be playing is in the Age of Sigmar sand pit or sandbox for our American audience out there. Do you agree with that, Mr. Rem? Do you think Age of Sigmar is still where the hip cats are going to be doing their serious wargaming business?
Always, my friend, always. 40k is for the kids. Fantasy, Age of Sigmar, Skirmish, that's where the big boys and girls play.
Now, speaking of Skirmish, Mr. Remington, I've got my book right here. And I know you have yours right there as well. And I issued you with a little bit of homework earlier today, which I'm sure you've taken it upon yourself to complete. And you've gone through the book in intimate detail, reading, first of all, the fluff section. So you'll be intimately familiar with all that. Then all the rules, which you are, of course, always fluent in, being the Remington that you are. All the missions, I'm sure you know them like the back of your hand. And
Andy, I can tell you this much. If you're talking about the Age of Sigmar manifesto of today, I've got as far as sniffing it, and it smells good.
Right, okay, so we may have a slight issue there, but I'm sure since you have the book open in front of you, and it's only a small number of pages, in fact, the relevant portions that we want you to look at, really, are only the sections on the armies you have. And the only thing you really need to see is the amount of points that each model costs, because surely you've played your armies enough times now so that you know it inside and out. You know which units you like to bring to the battlefield.
I tell a lie. I have looked at the points, and I'm one of them players that likes to put on all my favorite models on the table. But in your first game, you're recommended to only play 25 points.
If you're doing the campaign, that is. And yes, you can see how some factions might struggle a little bit with that, since you must have a hero.
Yes.
For example, if you wanted to play Death, you don't have many cheap hero options in there. Well, none of the factions have that many cheap hero options, but if you wanted to take something like, let's say, a Necromancer, you're already at 22 points if you want to start your faction off that way. So you're definitely struggling playing a campaign with a Necromancer. And especially when you consider that there is no summoning in Age of Sigmar Skirmish.
Absolutely. And look, I'm just looking at Daughters of Cain, and if I want to field my blood rack Medusa, I'm assuming she's naked and not on the cauldron of blood. She will cost me 24 points. And the other thing I noticed, Andy, I mean, obviously, it should be something you build up to, because, each game you play in the campaign, the points values go up too. So that's cool. But I was thinking it's kind of, you struggle to get 25 points in your first band because they don't sort of round into that very well.
And narratively speaking, if you start off with a really cheap hero, saving up for one of the more expensive ones isn't that easy. If you want to play it in such a way that you give each character a name and they persist throughout the campaign and you're not just ditching your entire roster and starting again at the end of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this. I'm looking at Darkling Covens now. If I fielded a sorceress, that would be 16 points. That leaves me 9 points. So I can have a Blackguard, an Executioner, 2 Executioners.
Oh, pushing the boat out a bit there.
That's it. There's a 9 points. Yes, I have a Blackguard and 2 Executioners. So it sounds like quite a bit of fun, actually.
Well, it's designed to be very, very low model count.
But they aren't all represented in this book, are they? For example, I'm painting a Devoted of Sigmar battle force at the minute, and they're not represented. What can I do about that, Andy?
Well, people have come up with a certain formula that you can apply to units that do have actual war scrolls and point values, but aren't in the Skirmish book, which isn't perfect, and I'm sure some of them have been left out for a reason. But if, like you, people have been building armies for factions that are not in here, then there is a way you can do it with some minor dividing and chopping up of the point values. So it's not that complicated to get your Devoted onto the table in Skirmish mode.
And you can even save yourself the trouble, because there is a guy that's been posting on Age of Sigmar fans on Facebook, and he's done the work for you. So I'm able to look at his fan-made Free People's choices here. And he has got, in the Devoted Sigmar, a Warrior Priest at 16 points, a Witch Hunter at 12 points, and a Flagellant at 2 points.
Well, then, there you go.
Well, you can't make 25 points out of that, can you?
Well, you can get pretty close, and you can have some points left over for when you acquire more points in the missions.
Now, if you've got like 1 point remaining, right? Can you buy something with that? Like, can you buy like a potion or a...
Well, you certainly should be able to, if you can't. And of course, you can obviously amend the rules and write your own campaigns.
I'm looking at this, the final word I'll say on it, at College Arcane. So this is the Free People's sort of wizard school. It only has 1 unit in it, a Battle Mage at 20 points.
Well, that's if you want to build a pure list just from that subfaction, but they do recommend that you go by the Grand Alliances.
Right.
So, for example, you could have a Stormcast Liberator hanging out with the Dispossessed Dwarves, for instance.
Okay.
So that's what they recommend. But of course, some of the factions are well capable of being put out completely on their own. For example, the Stormcast have about 1 billion entries in here, as do the Bloodbound, and the likes of the Fire Slayers and such have quite a few as well.
I think it's going to be great, man. It's going to be great. I mean, I'm just looking at Bretonia. How about fielding a band? You know, you've got a Questing Knight and you've got a Grail Knight, and you've got a couple of Battle Pilgrims. That's a lovely little force to start off with, isn't it? Like, they're on like this quest to find the Grail.
It's very, very narrative driven. But before we delve further into this, because I'm sure there's more we would like to say on it, then let's see who we've got in the audience tonight, shall we? Because, as always, it's a packed house. Let's have a look in the participants list. We have the likes of Andreas Goodmanson, Bazooka J. Rambo, DLB Dibbington, Dice Miniature Paint Guy, Edwin Desvart, Gloomdreader Gaming, Kablams, Lawrence Jameson, who has actually done a couple of Skirmish battle reports already, Mickey Jenver, Oracle of God, Skeleton Flower, Stu Rat, Newbie is in there, of course, and there were more people commenting away a few minutes ago, more people popping up every few minutes. So before we go back to this, I want to have a quick look at the old GW website, as we generally do, but it's not going to be a very prolonged look, and you'll see why when we get there, because look at that. It's all about gigantic Space Marines.
Look at that. More importantly, look at the title. The game you asked for.
Well, it's not the game you asked for because it doesn't have fishmen in the starter box.
No, it doesn't. But it's interesting. Like, they've just last couple of years, Warhammer have totally turned the tables on all the people criticizing their practices. All the haters out there. This is what you asked for.
They have it. They're paying attention. that Willy Wonka has finally allowed people into the factory. They're allowed to ask questions of all the Oompa Loompas at conventions and everything. They've just completely opened the doors. People are swimming in GW's chocolate river as we speak.
But will it be Veruca Salt that enters first?
Well, that is the question that remains to be answered. So look at all this. It's pretty much all about 40k here. If we look on the Age of Sigmar section, then I think you'll find there's nothing in the pre-order section. New releases, of course, would still be some of the Caradron Overlords, the Sigmarite Mausoleum, and the Soulblight Necropolis battle mats, which someone actually pointed out something that I didn't notice. It's actually like a hammer of Sigmar almost there, isn't it? Into the design.
Ah, I see that. That's pretty nifty.
Yeah, so it's definitely a few steps above the kind of pizza vomit of the Khorne battle mat.
Now, talking of battle mats, Andy, 2 weeks ago on the last show, I did $1 million reveal idea, as I normally do, and that was the double-sided Remington battle map. So each side has a different map on it, which would be pretty awesome. Now, GW are currently advertising 2 Age of Sigmar ones, right? They've got the Khorne one, the pizza.
Yes.
And they've got this new one. Now, would you pay? There's a quandary question for you. Would you pay £75 for the double-sided map? Or would you pay £50 for the single-sided map?
If I was going to get a mat of that size, then I would probably want to get the most out of it, because that would be very rarely used compared to my 6x4 mats, probably. So maybe the double-sided would be an option, but then paying £75 for a mat, I think it's a bit steep. 2-in-1 though, not bad, but I'm not sure about the whole double-sided mat idea. I'm not sure GW could pull that off with their current technology that they're using to build these mats. I think you're going to have to use some Remington innovation and give them a bit of inspiration there.
Well, yes, but I don't have the, what do you call it? I don't have all the manpower to make my ideas come true. So if we ask for it, if you ask for it, GW will do it. That's what it says on their website.
So if you ask them for a double-sided mat, you think it's going to happen?
As long as it said Remington on it somewhere, just to acknowledge.
Well, maybe they could do a set of Remington dice that just only have 1s on them.
I think we'd need I think we'd probably need more people clamoring for that to happen. And at the minute, it's only you.
Yes.
Having said that, though, if you look on our Facebook page, there is a vote. There is a vote for the up-and-coming general election, but this is the Andy and Rem show election. And currently, Andy, you don't have many votes.
Well, I think the fact that you posted it has possibly swayed a few people's opinions. I'm sure you slipped in a bit of propaganda into that original post, and you may notice that Cecil and Jeff have got some votes now as well on there. So the alternative candidates are working their way up. So you shouldn't be counting your chickens until they've hatched there, Mr. Remington.
Well, have a look. Voting ends on Thursday. And the loser has to sing a commiseration song praising the winner for all their good qualities. How's that?
Well, if I end up having to sing a song praising all your good qualities, could say something really mean right now about the length of the show, but no, I won't. I'll resist. Okay, let's see what people have been saying, shall we, about Skirmish, because there have been quite a few comments. There was one. There's one from Dreddy there. If people play it and I can actually find opponents, it already offers more than lots of other Skirmish games. Yes, it's very, very easy to get into. If you already know how to play Age of Sigmar, then you're not even learning a new system. You're just diving in and making 1 or 2 tweaks to the rules that you already know. So someone who's already completely fluent in the Age of Sigmar rules, for example, Mr. Remington here, would have no trouble at all picking up Skirmish mode with the minor amendments that have been made, would you?
We'll have to see, but I'm sure I'll pick it up pretty fast. And
as you tend to do.
And duly dispatch you, Andy, as I tend to do.
And I'm sure that one of the issues you've had with the full Age of Sigmar game is the time it takes to actually play one of the games, which can get up there, because if you're not playing your armies regularly, then becoming fluent with the rules might take you an hour or 2, and then by that time you're on turn 3, the game's only half done pretty much. And we found that as the day goes on, you tend to start tiring a little bit, shall we say. As your knowledge of the rules increases, it seems that saps your energy levels and you start to crash. So by the time we get to game 2, you're almost asleep already. Is that fair to say?
I was never very good at maths. So I think the maths side of it just tires me out a bit. But I do try. I mean, we have got 2 games in a row done once before, haven't we?
We have. And I'm reliably informed that you didn't fall asleep in the car ride home afterwards and crash it. So
I think the difference is if you're just having a game for a laugh, then it's you don't have to think about it too much. Just focus on that. But we tend to record our games, don't we? So I think that bit sort of tires me out because it's like you're presenting and playing at the same time.
You can slow it down a little bit, yes. But with this book right here, this handy dandy skirmish book, I'm thinking we could easily get 3 games in and run a little narrative campaign in the space of 1 day. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it'd be fun. What would you field, Andy? Would you have 3 different armies, or would you like build it up?
Well, it depends on the particular story that we're going for. If we build it around, let's say, one of your forces, perhaps Beastmen, and they're working their way towards a sacred, ancient Beastmen burial ground that's somewhere in the mortal realms, perhaps they encounter various different factions on their way there. And then if they win or lose, that would send the story off in a different fork in the road, as it were.
I see.
So I don't think it would be too difficult to put that together. And then, of course, the faction they come up against would determine what kind of realm they're in, maybe, what kind of terrain there is about the place before they reach their destination through a series of realm gates. Perhaps Jeff pops up for one of the scenarios. Perhaps Cecil is in there as well. I think it could be quite entertaining.
Here's a question. If you field a character, right, and your character dies, do they kind of come back in the next game? Or do you think they should be dead and you should have to sort of start with a base character again?
Well, what I think, the best way I believe that's been handled, from GW at least, was in Gorka Morka. The way that used to work was that when a character died during the game, you would roll on a table. So it was very, very unlikely they would completely die. And chances were that they would much more likely come back with like a wheel for a leg. So they get extra movement, or they would have their teeth knocked out, which is obviously a thing of great pride in the orc communities. So they would like lose one leadership or something like that.
Yeah. So they'd have a negative thing would happen to them.
Personalized stat modifications. So sometimes they would actually get better as a result of dying, and sometimes they would get worse.
Yeah.
So obviously you could make your own little tables and customize depending on the faction, so it would be slightly more relevant. For example, the Stormcast, the only thing that's going to happen to them is they're going to be pulled up back into the realm of the heavens. Sigmar is just going to like wave his magical wand. The armor just appears around their torn and battered flesh, and then suddenly they're back to exactly the same way they were before, except with a slight slice of their personality removed. So maybe you could amend their stats slightly to represent that.
So what happens with bravery in Skirmish? Does bravery not count anymore? Because
well, it does, but it's across your entire force, and you use your general's bravery. So you don't do it on a unit-by-unit basis. So if you take nothing but, for example, zombies, then you'd lose a lot of them in a turn, which would lead to a large battle shock loss. So you could end up losing a lot more models as a result of that. But of course, if you have just tons of zombies, you could end up only losing more zombies as a result of that. So if you have, let's say, 5 zombies and a couple of crypt horrors as your big hitters, and your 5 zombies get killed, that's going to be bad news because you don't have any more of a zombie buffer to absorb the battle shock casualties. So you're going to be losing actually powerful models then.
So can you lose a character model to bravery?
I believe you can, yes. Your whole force can be wiped out as far as I've read.
Right.
So you don't want to be throwing units away willy-nilly, even if you've got chaff, because them taking casualties is actually going to affect your entire army. When I say entire army, it's not going to be that many models, though. Because really, people who have played it a bit already, the skirmish mode, they think that you should be below 20 models, really. And I would probably agree with that, because obviously you're activating each unit individually in close combat, rather than as a unit. Each model is activating, so it's going to get quite complicated if you end up going 20 or above, I think. I think low model count is the way to go. And for someone like me, who generally plays low model count armies anyway, it's going to be very easy. I'm not sure how your hordes of, for example, Ungor raiders would do in an environment where they all have to activate individually.
I don't know. I mean, I've kind of left behind those armies a bit. They're still in their boxes, so I don't know. I've been, I've got.
You're all about the devoted now.
I'm all about the devoted at the minute because, they're the new thing for me. But wouldn't mind some tactical advice on them guys because I don't know, they look a bit like a glass cannon to me. They don't look like they'd be able to stay in for the long fight.
Yeah, there's one for you. Remington tactical tips for any of the factions that he's planning to use, particularly for skirmish. So if you're thinking like devoted of Sigmar, what else have you got to throw in there? Your ogres.
Ogres. I've got dark elves. I've got wood elves.
Bone splitters.
I've got bone splitters. I've got orcs and goblins. And I've got a corn force. And I've got dwarves as well. Yeah.
We've had some comments here. Kiblams says it can get tricky to play. Imagine you had 10 rats in close combat already and 20 more charge. How do you keep track of which ones get the bonus for charging? Yes, that could get very, very annoying, couldn't it? Any model that has a bonus for a charge. So I think going for the slightly more elite stuff and then just having a small amount of the really cheap chaff units like your zombies and your clan rats and so on is definitely the way to go.
Well, that rule is easily fixed by if you've got more than, say, 5 of the same unit type, that becomes a unit rather than 5 individual models.
That would be one way to do it, certainly, but that's not how it is in the rules. So you wouldn't want to be playing the rules incorrectly now, would you? I know you're a bit of a stickler for these things. You're a bit of a rules lawyer at heart.
Just a sense of fairness and justice, Andy. That's what it is.
Okay, so before we dive back into this, what have you been up to then over the last couple of weeks in a wargaming sense?
Oh, God. Well, I had a week off last week from work and I got a bit of painting done, but then I had loads of music stuff and I don't know, things have kind of, we've been playing live quite a lot. These sort of things go in dips and peaks and we've got loads of gigs lined up now. We're doing quite well in a gig scene and that means like weekends are sort of being taken up now with live shows. So I don't know. I was hoping to come up and see you for a game, but that's not going to happen for a little while now. So
I'm going to have to get that in at some point, and I'll write a nice narrative campaign for your Ungors.
Why the Ungors? Because you just want to kill them, don't you? They want revenge for all them years of hurt by your dwarf bloody master engineer.
Not just hurt, all those years of mockery. Whenever we want to mention a unit that's particularly poor, it's always the Ungors that get brought up, isn't it?
So yeah, things have been a bit sort of busy for me, but one thing I've been able to do is resist the temptation of buying more models that I don't need yet, and I don't have the time to paint. So, I've been quite good like that. So,
well, speaking of avoiding temptation,
yeah.
You could say that my lack of temptation to buy new miniatures is entirely fueled by the fact that I spent all my money on flying dwarves. But I did manage to resist buying some models recently. But things I've been working on, you'll see what I've painted recently in a short while. But before that, I'm actually painting 20 Arcanauts at the moment. So this is the stage they're at right now. So they're getting pretty close to the wash and glaze stage. You can see it's just base coats right now. And I haven't tidied up the blue or anything yet. So they're getting there, but this is kind of how they look. And it looks pretty lame, actually, doesn't it, at this stage, before you put the washes and stuff on it.
They remind me of Smurfs.
Yes, at this stage, they do look quite Smurf-like. And when they're finished, they don't look that much less Smurf-like, to be honest.
So what, Age of Sigmar skirmish with the Caradron Overlords, I don't suppose, can you use the ships?
You definitely cannot use the ships. None of them are small enough to be considered a skirmish unit. But I will get into my thoughts on using my particular factions in skirmish very shortly. But I had a very long and busy weekend. First of all, I had to get up at 5 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday, except I ended up waking up at 4 on both days. Because on Saturday, I had a Kings of War tournament, which I think I made a fatal, possibly sacrilegious blunder, because the tournament was being held in a church and I was playing undead. Probably not a good idea. If you're going to be in a church, you probably don't want to be playing undead or a kind of demon-like army, do you? You're asking for trouble. If there's anything going on up there in the clouds, it's going to make its way down in smite form onto your dice rolls on the table. So it's a risk maybe you shouldn't take. And then on Sunday, I went down to the UK Games Expo wearing my Cheeks t-shirt. Of course, I'd had chats with various people about Cheeks. And normally when people go to conventions like that, where there's just untold magnificent miniatures around the place to tempt you, people end up spending a lot of money. But I don't have a lot of money right now because I just spent all of it on Flying Dwarfs. So the only thing I actually bought was a giant crab, which I'm going to do a review video on because it's an interesting giant crab, because most giant crabs out there are in metal and this one was in resin, which is why it caught my eye. So people can look forward to that. But the main reason I wanted to go is because I haven't been to a convention or anything that wasn't a tournament for a couple of years now. So there's just lots of people in the community, in the industry, that I haven't seen for a really long time. So pretty much I just wandered around all day.
I can guarantee they saw you, Andy, but
yes,
they've been avoiding you.
People do not avoid me. People are constantly seeking me out for photo opportunities, which I'll get to in a minute. But I was wandering around, and then as soon as I spot someone I recognize, have a chat with them, and then wander off again until I spot someone else. And lots of fun was had. I didn't spend that much money. One person, there's an odd moment. There was this guy going around seemingly taking selfies with industry legends, and he wanted to take one with me. And he kind of introduced himself, and he was in a rush, so he kind of ran away after we took the picture. So I didn't even get to ask him if he genuinely knew who I was from YouTube, or whether he just thought I had a cool outfit or what. But I'm going to assume that being an A-list celebrity, he knew who I was in full, completely. I think that's fair enough to assume, don't you think?
What? Hold on, run that by me again. He saw you, took a selfie, then ran away.
No, he saw me, ran up to me, said hello, introduced himself, and then asked to take a picture. And then he was kind of in a rush and disappeared. So I didn't get the chance to actually ask him whether he recognized me from YouTube or whether he just thought my outfit was cool.
Yes.
So I'm going to assume it's both, actually. Because when you see such a well-dressed celebrity, you'd be a fool not to take a selfie with them. I didn't do any videoing on the day because really I'm not that interested in gaining information about all these new products, particularly right now. I've got enough on my plate as it is. So if you want to see me in video form from the Games Expo, then you should head on over to Green Stuff Games channel, because I did an interview with her and I'm going to be on there at some point over the next few days. So you should subscribe there if you want to see my... It was a bit of a long, rambling interview on my part. I think maybe I went a bit overboard, being a bit silly with some of my answers, but that's just the way I am. And I'm probably going to pop up in the background of lots of other people's videos as well. Because really, when you see someone in a colour that stands out a little bit against the sea of drab that makes up the general wargaming community, you're going to notice a bit of background somewhere, aren't you? Definitely.
Well, it is nice to see a bit of colour rather than just black, isn't it? That's true. Hey, listen,
there's people wearing grey and black with like big white logos on the front, and it's a bit boring for me. There's not enough people wearing like bright pink or neon green. I want people to go back to kind of early 90s colours.
What, tie-dye stuff?
That would be a start. It's a bit of excitement and colour out there in the world.
Yeah,
Don't you agree?
I agree. Hey, listen, we need to big up Raphael Marge, because he's the guy that's been doing all the unofficial skirmish points out there, and they look really splendid. You know.
Indeed, we do. I've seen a couple of those.
See, I've just turned the topic as well. I've just changed
doing a public service.
A great and vital public service indeed. So listen, if you guys see Andy at the tournament, you know, it can be like the Where's Wally kind of thing, can't it? Spot Andy.
I think it'd be a bit too easy to spot me, though. Especially at a tournament where people dress in even more boring attire than they do at conventions. Because at conventions, you'll have people like dressed up as characters, carrying around giant swords, wearing wigs and all that stuff occasionally. But at tournaments, it's just bland wall-to-wall, pretty much.
You know, Andy, I did there was like a Warhammer convention recently or something like that. And I found a picture on the internet of 3 guys all wearing orange. And it looked very strange. And I posted the picture up on the Andy and Ram Show site saying, look, Andy's got like a devoted following or something like that. And someone that works for GW liked it. So you're
Well, there you
obviously
go.
on their radar.
It's the devoted of Andy. They're just all these kind of priests and flagellants that just go around wearing orange.
That's right. And we decided to put some special rules in place for that. So the devoted of Andy rules are it's +2 to hit any models in the devoted Andy faction, because really you can't miss. But you do gain 1 bravery point for being in the devoted of Andy.
It does take bravery to go out dressed the way I do, because occasionally random people will come up to you on the street and either inquire what's going on with your outfit or just comment on it. Like the other day when I was actually coming back from the expo, someone drove past. It was just a woman driving along in her car, and she actually leant out the window while driving and shouted something like, "Nice orange, mate."
He probably thought you're there to fix the roads or mend a sign in the street.
I don't know about that, because the orange shorts are a bit less neon than the orange trousers that I've got. So I think the shorts, they're a bit more low key, whereas the trousers, people either think they're high visibility or they think I'm nuts or escaped from prison.
Probably
none of which are true, of course.
Probably escaped from asylum.
It's just highly fashionable to wear orange nowadays.
Anyway, let's move on, man.
Do we have to? Can we not talk about orange clothing for another 20 minutes or so? What's your favourite colour to wear out and about, Mr. Remington, when you want to stand out from the crowd?
It's not so much colour, it's more style. I like sort of fitted stuff that looks a bit like Middle Eastern and exotic. That's my thing. I don't like anything bland and boring.
There is nothing bland and boring on this show. We are the complete opposite of that. Now then, speaking of no bland and boring at all, shall we go over with a fine-tooth comb the point values of the Stormcast Eternals in this book?
That's the one thing I did skim over straight away. So,
well,
yeah.
Would you like me to give you some detailed analysis on some of these units and tell you why I think some of them are particularly tasty? There is one controversial thing, actually, in this book that I don't think has been cleared up yet. Now, it says that you must abide by the restrictions for number of weapons you can take in a unit.
Oh, yes.
So, for example, if there's a unit of 10 and you're allowed 2 special weapons in it, you have to follow those rules. But it doesn't say that the first 2 models you select can't be the ones with the special weapons. Because do they really expect you to take a full unit to unlock the one special weapon?
Oh, God, Andy.
Do they expect you to take 10 models before you can get the extra fancy sword?
You're one of them guys that pushes it to the limit, to the point where GW have to then do a rules update.
But people have been playing it both ways, though. So it's debatable, because the way it's worded, it's not entirely clear. So people aren't sure about it at the moment. And I would say it's fun to just have, let's say, 3 Overlords Arcanauts. But do you really have to have them with just the basic weapons? Can't you have one with like a skyhook without taking 10? I don't know. It's not clear. So that would determine which of the units are particularly tasty. For example, the Stormcast Eternals, the Judicators, if you could take the special weapon after just taking 1, then you would obviously take the bow that's insanely good and better than the rest of the unit combined, almost. Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Whereas if you have to wait until you've got a 5th one, then you would actually start thinking about, actually, it's not really worth taking 5 because of how many points there are. So you end up with just the kind of the bog standard troop. Auric Lovegod said, yes, Andy, you have to take 8 guys and then get the 2 weapons. Yes, that's how many people are playing it, but some people haven't been playing it that way. And I haven't seen an official clarification from GW, so if there is one, let me know, because I am unaware of it.
People have been, on the things that I've seen, people have been bigging up the Zangor Skyfires as real tasty units.
Oh, really? Right, let's have a look at that and find out why, shall we?
Well, they do cost 11 points in Skirmish, but I do know that in the actual just normal Age of Sigmar, these guys are amazing because they've got such massive movement. They've got, like, I think 3 or 4 wounds or something like that. An amazing saving throw.
They are considered the ultimate cheese to the point that whenever something new comes out, people look at it in the mindset of how will this do against Skyfires?
Yeah. It's got to happen, hasn't it? I mean, look, the big ogre mammoth. That was the big cheese thing, weren't it? And I guess if you've got Skyfires, it can just take that thing out before it even gets a go. So
Now,
every couple of months there's a new cheese.
if you're really interested in squeezing some cheese out of these things, then you want to look for heroes, particularly that have abilities that will affect particularly enemy units, like within a certain range. Because normally, if you have, for example, the Knight Azeros, who has an ability that when he sets it off once per game, then it inflicts mortal wounds on nearby units. Often you'll be setting it off and there'll be like a unit of 20 orcs there and a unit of 10 orcs there. So it's not that big of a deal, is it really? Mm-hmm. But when they're all individuals, each model, each one can be affected by that. So if they're grouped up, you can be just wiping things off the table with certain abilities like that. So you have to look at those units. And I see here that the Knight Azeros is actually only 16 renown, not points. We have to call it renown so people think we know what we're talking about. So he actually sounds pretty cheap if that ability works the way I'm assuming it does now. Dice Miniature Paint Guy says Lord Relictor is insane. Yes, lots of the heroes, their abilities were written with larger units in mind, and some of them don't seem to translate in a particularly fair way, shall we say. But you would assume that many of them would be pointed appropriately, but some of them don't necessarily seem to be, I would say. I think there's obviously bits of cheese that are going to squeeze through the gaps, and they'll probably put out another one of these books at some point in the future and address whatever is determined to be entirely broken in the future.
So the Lord Relictor, I guess, because he heals wounds, doesn't he? So that's probably a great thing in Skirmish, right? Survivability.
Yes, because if you think about it, healing a set number of wounds, ordinarily, when you're healing wounds up, you're not going to get the chance to heal many things because the model is just entirely dead and you can't bring them back into the unit. So yeah, I think it's pretty tasty because a lot of the things you're going to be fielding, you would be able to use that ability on because there's going to be less damage inflicted onto things, probably. If you get where I'm coming from. If a skeleton hits, let's say, let's take as an example, a Retributor gets hit by a skeleton. Often, a unit of Retributors being hit by a unit of skeletons, they might do enough damage to kill one model, I would say. But then, if it's just one skeleton hitting one Retributor, because all the others aren't in range yet, some of them fail their charge, then they're probably just going to inflict a wound rather than actually killing him outright, which leaves him ripe to be healed. Mm-hmm. It's one way I would look at it. I'm sure there's plenty of other cheese in there that people have been analysing, the cheese seepage as it comes out as well.
Here's one for you, Andy. If you say if you choose Black Knight, which are 5 renown each, right? Can you have one as a standard and one as a musician?
It says you can take the upgrades, yes.
So with the Black Knight standard, that enables them to return after getting killed, doesn't it?
Which is very interesting. I mean, would that only affect the guy that's actually carrying the standard? And does it only come into effect if the standard is still alive? Because if it does, it would just have no effect, wouldn't it? Because they're not considered part of the same unit anymore.
Yes, I see what you're saying. Right, okay. So it'd be kind of useless then, wouldn't it?
Stu Rat says, Dark Oath Chieftain kills something. Every unit within 1 inch takes a mortal wound. Every figure is a unit. Yes, just things like that. Those kind of hero abilities where if you're surrounded by lots of individual tiny units, they're dishing something out on all units within a particular bubble. It's just going to affect every single model rather than just the unit. So there is cheese to be had, I'm sure. And people will be...
If you look at the Khorne Bloodbound, the Blood Reavers are only 1 point each. And they get extra bonuses, don't they, from things like the Blood Secretor. Yeah,
there are lots of buffing characters there, which are more expensive if you look at them, though. So you wouldn't be able to fit that many Blood Reavers in with the Blood Secretor. He's worth 24 Blood Reavers. Now, certain units that have bonuses if you go above a certain number of models on the War Scroll, obviously that's not going to come into effect. So those models presumably are appropriately costed without that ability. So your Blood Reaver for only 1 point. That's very, very reasonable, isn't it? I mean, some of the factions don't have anything that's a single point. The cheapest Stormcast Eternal would be a Liberator at 4 points.
Well, a Flagellant costs 2 points. Doesn't seem fair, does it? What would you rather have? 2 Blood Reavers or 1 Flagellant?
That's an interesting... I would say it depends what buffing units you've got in there that could make them better and what kind of scenarios you're playing. Because the scenarios in here, they're not all just kill everything. Because there are the various other things like seizing particular areas. So often there'll be benefits to having more models on the table, but other times there won't be. Because if you just have nothing but endless sea of terrible models that are just on their own, when you activate to go first in combat, you're only activating one guy. And then the enemy activate their Retributor, and suddenly they kill like 4 of your dudes.
Aha. So you can attack multiple units in one combat round.
Yeah, because you've always been able to split your attacks up, haven't you, between different units.
I see.
So you can say, well, I'll put 1 attack on each of these guys here then.
Yeah.
So yeah, you do have to strike a balance. You can't just go for just nothing but chaff, because then going first in combat does nothing for you, really. And if you are taking nothing but chaff, then you don't have to factor in going first in combat, because it's not a big deal for you, because like 90% of your force is going to be going first afterwards. And that's if they all get there, because they're all rolling separate charge distances. So they could end up getting there without any of their mates.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Bray Herds, Beastmen. You've in the skirmish book, you've only got Gors, Ungors, Ungor Raiders, a Bray Shaman at 18 points, and Bestigors at 3 points, which I think is pretty good points value for those. But I'm surprised they don't have Harpies in there, because Harpies will give you more sort of tactical choices, wouldn't they? I mean, they are part of the Beastmen army, so what? I don't understand why some...
Are Harpies in any of the other sections? Where would they potentially be?
Well, they might be in Dark Elves as well, but I couldn't see them.
Let's see if anyone knows that Harpies are in here, because I don't see them anywhere in the Chaos section. But that could just be me missing them. They might be in there somewhere, but I don't think they are. The biggest thing I can see that's in the book, by the way, is the Doom Wheel. I don't think there's anything bigger than that in here. The Corpse Cart as well is quite a substantial piece. So, of course, you can get that in Skirmish. Those things, of course, aren't ridiculously overpowered, though. And I think they are well pointed in here.
No, that just screams to me that they're just really getting phased out, some things.
You mean like the fact that there are no Bretonnians or Tomb Kings in here? Anything that's not currently in favour and available to buy. They don't want to encourage you down that path, do they?
But it's also encouraging you, sort of, by not including them, it's sort of telling you, you can't make them up yourself either. You know
well, we've kind of been saying since Age of Sigmar came out that even though they're accommodating all the past players that have their armies already left over from previous editions, it's really kind of a token gesture, and eventually, if not completely phased out, they're just not going to get the same attention as the new shiny factions, so that it will kind of push you away from using them towards the new exciting shiny stuff.
I can understand that, because why would they want to make something they don't produce really good in the game? It'd be ridiculous. But why not make some more Harpies?
Well, why not indeed? But they're not in the habit of making just generic fantasy stuff anymore, though, are they?
Yeah, no,
so I don't know. Don't think we'll ever see Harpies as you know and love them from GW ever again.
Yeah, but Gors and Ungors, right? They're not. That's a Games Workshop thing, isn't it? Beastmen, right? Wouldn't you say?
Well, the Beastmen are still, as they were in the previous edition of Fantasy, the actual Beastmen were somewhat generic. They had generic elements to them. There have been creatures that are quite similar in other fantasy realms.
Well, just rename it. Instead of calling it Harpies, they could call it sort of... Well, they're not going to call it Harpies. They're not going to call it Gargoyles. But they could say, like, I don't know, Wingors. How about that?
But if you look at something like Zangors,
Yeah.
then they are a new spin on what is essentially kind of a beast birdman thing. And that's where all the races are going to go. So if they're going to have anything harpy-like, then they would also be from space and have fish legs. By fish legs, I mean not legs at all, by the way.
Yeah, okay. I see where you're going with that. Okay.
I think they'll mash them up. There may be something like harpies that comes along in the future, but it won't be as you know and love harpies. Kiblam says if they aren't sold on GW shelves and they're plastic, they aren't in the book. Well, there you go. They don't want you to be fielding those things, or if they do, you have to make up your own rules. There's still plenty in here to work with, though, because even if you want to go for Beastmen, all you have to do is look on a different page, and you can see that as part of the Chaos Grand Alliance, you have access to things like Dragon Ogres.
Yeah.
You've got the likes of Chaos Warhounds. So you've still got quite a few options if you just stick within one Grand Alliance. You don't have to limit yourself to one sub-faction. So I think you could have a lot of fun making a little narrative force out of all this.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting challenge, actually, wouldn't it? If we're going to do a little campaign, come up with a little story-driven force with a set renown value, paint up a couple of models for it. It's not going to take very long.
Just looking at, say, like destruction, it'd be nice to have, if you had like 25 points to spend. You've got to have a champion, right?
You've got to have a hero, yes, to be your leader. It's not like in generic Age of Sigmar, where you can pick a skeleton to be your general. You can't do that.
Yeah. Then your general's like more than half your points to start with. It'd be nice to have a little warband, wouldn't it? Where you got one troll in there, a couple of goblins, an orc guy, just like a ragtag bunch.
Mickey Jennifer says, Minotaurs are gone, but I love Minotaurs. Yeah, again, Minotaurs, they're too generic fantasy for GW's tastes. So they're not going to be back in the same form, are they?
No,
although
Thaumaturge, haven't they? Or Ogre Thaumaturge.
Aren't Bulgors, what are they? Aren't they pretty much just Minotaurs?
No, but Bulgors? Yeah, yes. They are. They're hero Minotaurs.
Yeah, well, they're in this book. Under the War Herds. So you could have a Bulgor leading all your Ungors out there into battle, couldn't you?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's cool.
There you go.
Yeah, so, I mean, with the advent of this book then, do you think it's going to be a while before any new models get released?
I wouldn't say a while, exactly. But obviously they're going to be going nuts for 40k for a while, and they've got plenty of gigantic Space Marine stuff that's going to be coming out. But I think, like Stormcast Eternals, that'll be something that they keep revisiting between everything else. So I don't think we'll just see endless months of 40k. I think we'll have something new for Age of Sigmar, because obviously Caradron Overlords are still quite fresh in people's minds. Yeah. And I'd imagine they're still selling quite well, because they did seem to be very popular. And of course, I'm still painting my army while other people have already got 4,000 points already completely finished, because they're painting demons. So I would think we'll get something new for Age of Sigmar soon-ish. Not in the next couple of months, probably. But I don't know whether it'll be an entire new faction or whether we'll just get something small.
Well, there's constant little reveals, aren't they, on the GW version of What the Hell Is That, as first featured on this show. Speaking of What the Hell Is That, Andy, have you got one?
Well, there actually is a What the Hell Is That for this week, so I would encourage everyone to get your thinking caps on. If you need spectacles to see things clearly, you might want to whip them out and plant them on your face, because we're about to look at, zoomed in, a part of a miniature currently available in the Age of Sigmar range, and the first person to name it will be added to the prize pool. Okay, are you ready to play us into What the Hell Is That, Mr. Remington?
I am.
Okay, here we go.
The pain.
Bring the pain.
What the hell is that? 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 Only Andy and Remington know.
Come on, folks. What the hell is that?
It looks like something I've just painted.
Does it indeed? Raphael Marge says Lord Relictor. No, it's not. A few people have made 40k related guesses. Nope. Lawrence Jameson, Lord Relictor's Candles. Nope. Bazooka J. Rambo, Dwarf Miner. Nope. I think this is quite a tricky one, actually. I think people will be surprised when they see what this actually is. But I'm sure somebody out there has their wits about them, and they'll be able to get this.
It's the thing above the flames that stumped me. It looks like a curled horn or a tail. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Or is it a wheel?
Well, you never know. I did pick it for a reason because I thought it would be quite difficult, but not impossible. I think someone is going to get it. Come on, somebody's got to get this. Throw some guesses in. Edwin says something to do with clan rats. Nope, it has absolutely nothing to do with clan rats. Okay, Slackdorf has got it because it is the Luminarch.
Ah.
And there you go. You can see that candle right down there below this curved bit of metal here. That's where we were looking. There we go. Look at that.
Great model, isn't it? A great figure.
It is.
If you bought that model, would you get the Luminarch or the highish thing, the one with all the planets going around it?
The Hurricanum, or Hurricanum, however you want to pronounce it, I believe that's actually better in the rules, or so I've heard. But the Luminarch does look cool as well. They both look cool.
They both look well cool.
Yep. So well done to Slackdorf, and you will go on to the prize winning list, and then we'll have a draw for that at some point in the near future when we decide what the prize is going to be. Now, speaking of prizes, by the way, I did announce that the Golden Weasel Awards have begun. So there have been a few entries, but I'm not pleased with the amount of entries we've had so far. We've had very few, in fact. There have only been a couple of entries on each of the two categories, so I thought I'll hold off before posting any more and make sure that everyone on this live stream is aware that the Golden Weasel Awards are currently going. We've got two categories up on the Facebook group right now. I'm going to post another one tonight as well. And then hopefully on the next episode, we can reveal the winners if we've had enough entries. Of course, the Golden Weasel Awards are designed as painting awards for models or aspects of models or painting techniques that are generally underappreciated or underrepresented in the usual painting awards. So you should definitely swing on over to the Andy and Rem Show Facebook group, scroll down a bit and have a look at those and get your entries in. The ones we've got there now are Best Blood Effect and Best Skull, I believe. So surely there's no shortage of people with miniatures that can fit into those categories. Surely not. And we do have official prize support for the Golden Weasel Awards. And one of the prize... Hold on, let me just get this page up here because there's something I'm going to show everybody. It's only going to take me a second because the only company so far that have confirmed that they'll be handing over a prize is Squiddo Games. And they actually have a Kickstarter running right now. So since they're providing us with a voucher as one of the prizes for the Golden Weasel Awards, I thought maybe we should plug their Kickstarter a little bit. That's a nice gesture, isn't it? So let's have a look. Here we go. As you can see, it is already well funded. It's already at £10,000 of the 3,500 goal, and it's for a range of miniatures and bunnies dropping bombs on people, which is the bit that immediately catches my eye. And I'm sure that's what I'm going to get out of my particular pledge. So obviously there's all these kind of sci-fi miniatures as well, which I'm just going to scroll past relatively quickly, because of course this is a fantasy show and we wouldn't dare dwell on such things. But then we're going to get to the bunnies, and I mean, look at that. I actually have some of the guinea pigs from this range that are similar to this one, maybe.
How big are the bunnies? Are the bunnies like the size of bunnies compared to humans, or are they like giant bunnies?
They are... they're slightly above the actual scale that they would be, because of having them true scale bunnies, they would be tiny, wouldn't they? So they're probably slightly bigger, but not hugely. And they've got some unlocks as well. This has been unlocked. A bunny with like a helicopter blades on it, dropping bombs onto people. And I mean, look at that.
Wow.
How can anyone not want that?
Is that a gerbil or a hamster?
You know what? I don't know. I should know because I'm the ultimate hamster expert after releasing Cheeks into the world. And then there's some more cool looking stuff down here.
They're actually quite varied, aren't they?
And there are freebies as well. Badges with Bunny Bomb artwork on them. So I'm looking forward to getting some of those to add to my backpack, which it doesn't have that many badges on it, but I'm working on that.
I saw a brilliant pledge fund on Kickstarter for like these samurai miniatures. They looked like unbelievable. You know, they've got like samurai Ronin, like mythical creatures and that. It's finished now. I think they raised a ton of money for it, but I kind of like want to get my hands on the models now. But you know, it seems like a long way off after something's been successfully funded. You have to wait a long time, don't you?
Sometimes you do, but with these kind of smaller companies, often because they don't have 10 billion models unlocked, often they can get them out fairly quick. Let's see what it says actually. When can we expect this to be delivered? What does it tell us at the bottom here? Let's see, does it have a time frame on it? I'm not sure if it does, but the previous one, I actually got my gun guinea pigs, which you can see here. I got a set of these, the guinea pigs with the guns. I got them fairly quickly after the Kickstarter, actually. It wasn't very many months at all.
That's pretty cool. I've waited 2 years. I helped fund a campaign called Sticky Bones, which is like a mannequin that you can move around for animation stuff. It's been 2 years.
Yeah, there are definitely some Kickstarters that failed to deliver on their time frame. Some of them run into financial issues. They get in over their heads because they unlock so much stuff, and then the manufacturer that they made a deal with suddenly ups the price because now they're dealing with like 50 different models instead of 20. And there's so many things that can go wrong. But particularly bad Squiddo games do have a good track record of getting things out in a timely manner.
It's almost like,
in my experience,
it sounds like if I did like a Remington think tank Kickstarter and the reveals would be like $1 million ideas. Do you know what I mean? It seems like a lot of these Kickstarters are just like that. They haven't actually, you know what I mean? The ideas are there and the pictures are there, but they haven't actually made the stuff.
Sometimes the Kickstarter is designed to allow them to actually make the stuff, and other times they're able to make like the master copy, but they're using the Kickstarter to actually create the mold where they can replicate it. So it depends what stage of development they're at.
Well, look, if these people are making millions of pounds, I should be there. Really, I'm seriously going to rethink this Remington think tank idea. I might just put it up on Kickstarter. You know, if we unlock £1 million worth or $1 million worth of investors, that can be the Remington hot pot. Even though it's properly not invented yet, £1 million of funding would secure the brain power required to actually build it. People are getting.
I'm not sure that the Remington hot pot could be built for that amount of money. I think you would need more.
I don't know.
You would need huge amounts of money to kind of grease the palms of many politicians, because you would need to push through various new laws that would allow you to enslave people inside a painting capsule.
Hey, for £1 million, I'm sure Mickey Genver or Amy or one of these lovely people would be willing to live in the hot pot for a few months or so if they're getting paid a fair wage.
Okay, let's hear it. Anyone in the chat right now who is a painter to a good standard, would you be willing to live in the Remington hot pot and paint for a few months if all your kind of food and whatnot was delivered in through a series of pipes like an astronaut? I'm not sure many of them would, to be honest. And what would be your price to do so? What's the price per week that you would spend in the hot pot?
Hey, it would be lucrative, very lucrative, because I would have had $1 million worth of funding. So,
well, let us know what your going rate would be. Mickey Genver's already said she will go in the hot pot, but she hasn't actually given us a price.
She'll be painting herself up in the hot pot.
Lawrence Jameson says he's got the hot pooch, doesn't need the hot pot. Yeah, have you seen that video yet?
I have seen that video. It's nothing on the hot pot. Come on.
Well, it did seem to take him quite a while to paint just one miniature, and I think that's a bit slower than the hot pot.
I can imagine Mickey in the hot pot. It'd be really funny. I think what would happen is that the guy pressing the buttons to choose the models they want the hot pot to create might get a bit upset that nothing's happening, and then press the chaos button, and then Mickey will appear as a full-grown demonette of Slanesh in the room, covered in paint.
You never know.
Be worth it.
Who knows what's going on inside the Remington hot pot once the person's been sealed in there? They could go insane. They could get cabin fever. And miniature painters are already kind of borderline insane anyway, aren't they?
That's what it drives you to. So, what we're talking of painting, have we got any?
We certainly have, and we've got some of yours up first, in fact.
Yes.
So, the only thing I've got to say about this guy is, medical supplies here.
If you die, who will hate me?
Do you want to talk us through your paint job here?
Inspired by Warhammer End Times Vermintide, the computer game which you and I love to play. This is one of the characters. It's the Witchfinder General. And I do want to paint a GW one, but I've not been able to get my hands on one. But I saw this one come up by TT Combat Miniatures. It's quite a new release. And although his fencer blade is a bit wobbly there, I think I've done a pretty good job. It's slightly smaller scale than GW figures, so I've put him on a little bit of a sort of a half tree platform there to make up for it. But yeah, he's got everything a witch hunter will need. He's got his holy book there to speak incantations, to banish demons. He's obviously got his sacred blade. He's got a plethora of guns to shoot. He's got witch fire there to burn heretics. He's got holy water bullets. Everything.
This flaming hat has actually inspired me to ask you, Mr. Remington, as a musician who's performed on stage many a time, have you or any of your bandmates ever upkept the great musical tradition of wearing a hat that is in fact on fire during a performance?
This actually started by a guy called Arthur Lee. Is it Arthur Lee?
Brown.
Arthur Brown, that's it. Yeah, Arthur Lee was from the band Love. Yeah, Crazy World of Arthur Brown. He's kind of like one of them posh hippies from the 60s, like Donovan. But actually, it's just a trick of the camera shot, that is. If I took a picture of the model from behind, he has got a torch stuck in his backpack. So that's what it actually is.
Okay, so his head is not actually on fire.
No,
very well.
To light his way, and so he can still use both his hands for cleansing.
Well, I should hope so. Cleansing is a two-handed job, as they say. Next, I mean, look at this. This is just untold Remington goodness here.
Yes, this is my hero. Before the skirmish rules come out, I was going to consider this as my warbound, but obviously it would be a bit expensive. You can see my obviously the warrior priest on the left. You've got a fire wizard behind him. You've got the guy in the middle, which is like a flagellant hero, but he's too good to just be a normal flagellant, isn't he? He's like a Jeremy Corbyn after he's maybe lost the election, which I hope he doesn't, but he's going to turn to the flagellant path and go a bit nuts.
I don't know about that.
It'd have to be considered a warrior priest in my eyes. And obviously at the back there, you've got another take on a warrior priest. You've got like a sort of a pope character there with a flail. You got the witch.
Yeah, as we know, the Pope is known for having kind of a double-ended flail that he just waves around.
And on the far right, this is one of my little conversions, because in the Empire Battle Wizards box, you only get enough bodies to make 2 wizards, but you get a choice of 5 heads. So stuck a head on a flagellant's body, and the two. He's got like a what do you call it that tells the time? No, the sands of time run out in a anyway, he's holding one of those things up, and he's a bit of the fly in the ointment of this band. You can't quite trust that guy because he's got a staff that turns into a snake. So I'm not sure whether the Witch Hunter would allow such a man to be in their party, but there you go. They're my devoted to Sigmar heroes, all ready to go.
Okay, then. Next. Bum, bum, bum. This is what I managed to complete since the last show. This is the Arcanaut Admiral, who's a bit more metallic than the other Arcanauts because he's almost all metal. In fact, there's very few areas that you would consider that could be fabric, such as his gloves and the little area. There's a little headrest there. And you can see that the green gems on his base there as well. I think they look quite nice. That's just done with silver and the Citadel kind of gem paint, the special technical paint that they used for gems. So normally you would just use it on things like eyeballs, I think, but I believe it looks very, very nice on them as well. What do you think of that?
Andy, I do love to tease you about your painting, but you've got really good now. I think it's really cool.
I think these guys are looking very, very tasty indeed.
Was it whether the brown on the hammer that could do with a little bit of highlighting maybe, but
yeah, I think it doesn't show up very well on the camera. There is some highlighting going on there. I think it's just away from the light, that part though, so you can't really tell.
Yeah, maybe a wash of some sort on the grey rocks, just to darken them up.
There was method behind that madness, because normally what I do with rocks is I'll paint them grey, then put a really strong black wash on them, and then dry brush them in grey again. But with this lot, I decided, you know what, let's just try and make them look different from all the other rocks I've ever painted. So I just painted them grey, and then just dry brushed them with no wash, just so they'd look a bit lighter and to see if it looked a bit different to usual. And I think they look all right.
They look all right. A bit of dusting maybe, that might do the trick.
Yeah, perhaps.
The green little stalagmites, I really like them.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's called Waystone Green, the technical paint. You just put that over silver and it gets a really nice look to it.
Right. Yeah, very nice.
Okay.
Very nice.
Who's next? Brand. And look at this, it's a Griffhound.
Cool. Yeah, that's nice. It's a nice little box, that is, the hounds, aren't they?
It's very, very lion-like, the body here, isn't it?
I was thinking of getting some of these because in the devoted Sigmar army, you can have, you can have the, what's his face? My mind goes blank sometimes. You know, the priest in the Silver Tower box?
They're the Knight Questor.
No, the priest.
Oh, the priest. The devoted priest of something.
Yes, and they've painted him as an Afro-Caribbean man.
Okay, yeah, I know which one you mean.
Well, he's got a Griffhound, and he counts in the devoted Sigmar force. So I was thinking, well, maybe we could get some of these Griffhounds in my force to add a little bit of speed and dexterity.
Yeah, what colours would you paint them, do you think? Because you can go pretty nuts with these hounds, can't you?
You know, every paint job I've seen of hounds has been a bit different, and they've all been good as well. So, I don't know, it seems like you can't go wrong with them. But check out the skull, Andy. Surely that can be an applicant for the Golden Weasel Award, right?
Well, it might well be. If it's not, then it probably should be. You should be entering that as we speak, if it's not already been entered into the Best Skull Golden Weasel category, because that is quite an impressive skull. Okay, next. This is from Brand again, and I thought you'd appreciate this because of this clearly freehand work on the banners here.
Oh, wow.
I mean, look at that. I couldn't even imagine doing something like that on a banner.
Is that Middenland? Or is it Nordland? I'm not quite sure.
I don't know.
Maybe neither.
And there's even a skull on there.
Yeah, that's...
The one thing I've spotted, though, there is actually a stray hair. Let's zoom right in. You can see it there, can't you?
No.
Tiny little piece of hair dangling off the model there.
Yeah. It kind of looks natural.
I often find when I'm taking big, wonderful HD pictures of a model, I'll take the picture and then I'll look at it on my PC and think, what? There's no piece of flock there, like in it on his eyebrow. And then I'll look at the model really closely and think, oh yeah, it is. You can't see it with the naked eye, but it shows up on the picture. So it does highlight any potential flaws or bits of rogue danglage that have attached themselves to the model.
Andy, you must zoom in on the writing there because there's some unmistakable characteristics on that scroll that could only have been made with the trademarked Remington paint pen.
So that's what you think. You think the Remington paint pen was used heavily on these banners?
I do, and if it wasn't, then it must be another company stealing my idea because it's so well done.
Very, very tasty indeed. Next. Now I've got another Griffhound.
Wow.
This is from Mr. Sam, who always has amazingly painted stuff. And I think we looked at one of his Griffhounds last time, but this is the super duper Griffhound who actually wears a hat.
Right. Is this like the hero hound?
Yes, I can't remember what the actual hero Griffhound is called. Might be like Griff Prime or something. Wow. But again, the mud on the feet's something I would never attempt because I would be terrified of ruining the model, but he's clearly pulled it off well.
It's brilliant. The mud like just gives it, yeah, it's just so good, isn't it? It's given
takes it to the next level.
It sort of inspired me because have you seen the devoted Sigmar war altar? It's got like a giant Griffhound on it holding a hammer. So if I painted that like one of these, it could be like a giant Griffhound rather than just a golden statue.
The flesh on this, it almost looks like it's painted like a cloud, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's like looking up at the sky.
Even though it's painted blue, it looks warm-blooded with that shading.
Very, very nice indeed. Next, this is from Josh, and this is the kind of Chaos Dwarf Caradron Overlords with Hobgoblins. Hobgoblin Arcanauts.
Josh, I love this, Josh, because he's taking it to the next level. This is where I want to go now. He's not just like showing off your model painting, but actually making little dioramas, making little scenes out of what you've done. So
it takes a lot of bravery to buy all the new kits and just completely hack them apart and mangle them in what is essentially one big experiment, rather than just building them in the way that GW intended. So it takes guts, and when you pull it off, obviously you have a wonderfully unique army that is going to stand the test of time and look amazing for years to come, as this probably will. But it does take a lot of bravery, and I'm not sure I could do it. I'm not sure I could be so bold with a new army that I've spent all that money on.
So these are like hobgoblin overlords, like they've stolen a ship.
Yeah, they've got their Chaos Dwarf kind of masters that are bossing around the hobgoblins.
Yeah, love it.
Very, very tasty. Next. Kiblam says guts or money. Yes, if you're insanely rich and don't care about hacking up expensive models, then that would also explain it. This is from Jeff. Not Jeff the Chimera, but this is a different Jeff. And this is a much more vibrant looking corn than you normally see, isn't it? It looks almost friendly.
Is it Scarbrand?
I believe it is.
It's cool, man. The wings look like webs from the Spider Fang grot.
I don't think that if you had to hug a corn model, you would hug this one.
Yeah, he looks very approachable, this one.
He does much more approachable than they normally do. He doesn't look like he's got murderous intent. Maybe he's got intent to like give you a hug, sit down for a nice meal with you, and then cut your head off.
He looks like he's sort of almost surfing, doesn't he? He's got his leg up there. He's riding the waves.
Well, I say he doesn't look like he has murderous intent, but these guys down here don't look too happy. Although they're hiding from him. So maybe they're just intimidated because he wants a hug, and they are just scared of him because they're judging him on his looks. They're not actually being killed. That one's just falling over and he's hiding. So yeah, maybe he is just like the big friendly Scarbrand that's just come to town and wants to cuddle everybody. Next, this is from Dino, and skin highlighting to the max.
Wow, Dino is a top painter, man. Top painter. He makes like plain looking things look really cool.
Flat areas with just sharp edges on them. He highlights them as well as anyone probably that I've seen.
You can't. It's difficult to see the brushwork, isn't it? On the edge highlights, so good, especially on the the round thing. I don't know what you call that round thing that pins the armor into place, but it looks like it's like a badge, isn't it, with claws on it.
Very, very tasty indeed. And the highlighting on the sword, it's not something I would normally attempt, those kind of lines there, but it obviously looks good for a reason.
It's almost like a comb, isn't it? You could use that. You could use a comb, you could.
I don't know, I think my hair is just naturally stylish, and any attempt to tame it would be an affront to nature. Okay, that's all we've got to look at from the community. Wonderful paintwork for the last couple of weeks. Anyone who finishes off any other amazing projects before the next show and posts them up in our Facebook group, then I'll be happy to show them off next time. And I've just noticed we've already had a new entry in the Blood Effect Golden Weasel Award, so people should be in there commenting away. And we've also had a new request to join the group as well, so I'll just approve that right now. So watch out tonight, because I'm going to be posting another Golden Weasel Award category for everyone to check out and enter one of their miniatures into. And is there anything else we want to cover before we depart for the evening, Mr. Remington?
It's got to be that time. I've got to say bon nuit. It's
I think
been
it
a
definitely
lovely
is.
chilled out show tonight. I really enjoyed it.
It has. It's been, even though we were analysing a book, who would have thought that would have got your juices flowing? It's this skirmish idea. You're sinking your fangs into it, aren't you? And allowing the juices of a slightly more casual narrative, wargamey goodness to dribble down your gaming chin.
Absolutely, because like you got fewer models, but they become like less throwaway.
Yes,
Yeah.
you give each Ungor a name, and then when he's skewered, inevitably, then you can actually shed a tear. Whereas usually it's just like a broom sweep 20 dead Ungor off the table at once.
It would, like, imagine like an Ungor raider with a bow actually, being able to kill a whole unit on his own. It'd be like a major victory in itself, wouldn't it? You wouldn't need to win the scenario. Just managing to do that would be, he'd just send him running off, clapping his hooves in glee into the forest again.
It would. So, folks, in the permanent comments after the show, after the live chat has disappeared, you should encourage Mr. Remington to make his way up here to play a series of skirmish games in narrative form, and I think that would be very entertaining. I'm sure all the people would like to see that. So, thanks for joining us, everybody. It's been completely packed from start to finish of this show. We had a lot of people waiting before we went on the air, a lot of people still watching now, after about an hour and 20-something minutes we've been going, I think. So hopefully there'll be something on the news horizon, Age of Sigmar related, in a couple of weeks, but if not, I'm sure we'll have plenty to discuss anyway.
Brilliant. And I think, Andy, it's time for us to maybe have a guest on the show that's maybe not appeared before. So if
I do think we should be looking for some more guests, yes.
Yeah, if there's someone out there, in the comments or that wants to, watches it later on, wants to come on the show, let us know. You just make sure you ooze charisma.
Yes, you must have charisma oozing from every orifice.
And you must be able to take a joke as well and not be too serious. And be willing to sing.
Oh, we've got a comment that's going to get you really excited here. Rob Lloyd, sweet, says, New General's Handbook coming soon.
Uh-huh.
That's going to be your ultimate episode, isn't it? When we go through the point values for every unit and see what's gone up and down and talk at great length about which ones have maybe got away with something and not been adjusted in the correct manner. That's going to be really exciting, isn't it? You can look forward to that one. You can maybe get yourself a pillow for that episode.
Do people really love doing all that sort of stuff?
People do, yes. People like to see you try and... Well, they'd like to see you try and learn the rules of the game, first of all. I think. Anything else after that would just be a bonus. So, let's get the old graphic up here. And I'm actually going to be singing us out this week.
You are. I'm glad you're not going to renege on your promise.
No, I've got a lovely song prepared, which hopefully I won't make a mess of at all. And everyone who's watching, don't forget to check out the various links in the description, some of which will be added after the show. But there are quite a few in there now already various Facebook groups and the other links that are in there, all very exciting. So the song tonight is going to be dedicated to really the endless struggle of Remington to create a force of devoted of Sigmar that could potentially match up with anything I could throw at him, and how futile that is. So, here we go. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Devoted of Sigmar, what will you do when bombs and torpedoes fall onto you? Will you flagellate yourself with a chain, or perhaps self-immolation and go down in flames? When you're wearing no armor, you have no chance. Your only protection is a pair of short pants. Although do not despair,